Scrutiny Committee of this year, so this civic year anyway. We have quite a good agenda here. Can I just introduce everybody up here on the panel? David Martin on the right, who's the operations manager. Samantha Grisman, Ash Watts, Peter and myself and Jason, and Caroline Leatherday, Debbie Howman, and Claire Allen at the end. So, and then of course Michael Bingham over there, looking after the IT. So first of all, are there any apologies for absence?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We've got apologies from Councillor Bond, with Councillor Chapman here as substitute, and also Councillor Andy Nash and Simon Ripton. The Councillor is here as substitute.
Okay, thank you. There's no public participation. So we move on to the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. I assume everybody's had the chance to view the minutes. Anybody want to make any comments before? No? Okay, in that case, would somebody like to move that we note the minutes? Peter? And seconded Roger. All those in favour? Okay, that's unanimous. So moving on then again, and has anybody got any interest to declare as written down in the agenda? No? Okay. So we move on to weed management. I don't know who's going to start this.
Thank you, Chair. You'll have to forgive me for a minute while I negotiate with IT. Oh, there we go. Does it work? Yeah, you just need to that one. No. Okay. Good evening, councillors. So following meetings with the Climate Change and Biodiversity Group, I was asked to bring a presentation rather than a report this evening to update members on the subject of weed management throughout the district. Some of you may recall, and as a reminder, so elected members made the decision to restrict the use of glyphosate to simply invasive species back in 2020. Some of you were members at that time. So since then, we have conducted some trials of non-glyphosate based products and also purchased a weed ripper as permissioned from that report in 2020. What I'd like to do is take you through kind of an update of where we are in terms of trials, but in terms of legislation, and where we are as a council, and perhaps put forward some recommendations for you at the end to consider for the report that will be coming to you in March, Community and Environmental Committee. So what are we debating? So glyphosate essentially is the key ingredient in herbicides. This means it's used to kill unwanted weeds, plants and vegetation. We do use it, or we did before, in horticulture to address weeds, but it's more predominantly used in agriculture to enhance crops by removing competing plant species. The use of glyphosate has become more contentious in recent years, with studies questioning the safety of the product, linking glyphosate to conditions from infertility to cancers. Literature of this nature has gradually increased since a particular lawsuit in 2019, where a couple in America were awarded over $2.9 billion against Monsanto, which is a manufacturer of Roundup, key ingredient being glyphosate, having both developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma within a year of each other. It was found that they had used Roundup on their own land for several years without PPE, which is personal protective equipment. This was due to the product not showing any levels of toxicity on the labelling. So many of these cases in the literature have been taken against Monsanto regarding the safety of glyphosate for users, animals and the general environment. So there is an argument for and against the use of glyphosate online, but mostly in the literature it is connected to agriculture, so it is sometimes difficult to pin down the horticultural uses. So where are we in terms of glyphosate at the council? So of course we've not used it since 2020 except on invasive species. However, prior to the restrictions, the Clean and Green team would use an estimated 30 litres of glyphosate-based product each year across footpaths, closed churchyards, open cemeteries, war memorials, sports grounds and council-owned buildings like the leisure centres and the town hall. There is an asterisk next to 30 litres. This is estimated. I came into post in 2020 and that estimate is done from the knowledge and experience of the team and really the understanding of the ratio in using glyphosate. So I would support that estimation. Glyphosate was always handled by those with a PA1 and PA6 certificates. A PA1 course covers the theory, legislation, health and safety requirements, precautions and product label information. The PA6 course is the practical unit covering the safe application of herbicides and the handheld lance or knapsack that we use. We would use knapsacks. In terms of legislation, in 2020, when the report was brought to in front of members, those might recall, we were actually waiting for a decision from the UK government whether we were going to continue the approval of glyphosate, and actually we're working with the European Commission at that time. So we waited a little while for that decision. At the end of November 2023, the European Commission adopted and published what's called the Implementing Regulation, renewing the approval of glyphosate for a period of 10 years until 15th of December 2033. If any councillors do struggle to sleep, it is an 11,000 page document, so it's quite thorough. These decisions aren't taken lightly. They're following assessments by key organisations, again, that the UK is still in collaboration with, so the EFSA, so the European Food Safety Authority, and critically the European Chemical Agency. There were updates to the glyphosate application in this report, however, they were solely for agricultural use and, for example, one of them was limits on the pre-harvest use. So coming on to country and council, so there are some countries across Europe that are holding on to their ban of glyphosate, so for example the Netherlands, France and Denmark. Others have restricted their use in public spaces like Portugal and Luxembourg. More locally, there are several councils in the UK that continue their ban for glyphosate, namely Glastonbury was the first one in 2015, Hammersmith, Durham, Dorset and more locally Erewash. The Pesticide Action Network, PAN UK, report that over 40 councils in the UK have reported restrictions to glyphosate use. I just wanted to add there that Derbyshire Dales District Council, even before the ban, had prohibited the use of glyphosate on such areas as play areas and high-use public spaces, and would always restrict the use when parks were busy. So there was still a prohibited use before that ban in 2020. Some councils have actually reversed that ban, like Brighton-on-Hove, North Lancashire and the Isle of Wight, due to the challenges in managing weed growth following the ban. So trials. So we've got a variety here. Initially, in the first report, and I just wanted to reiterate the substances that we've trialled. Two main substances that are used in non-glyphosate based weed control, which are, I'm going to pronounce them correctly hopefully, David, acetic acid and palagonic acid to kill unwanted weeds and plants. So I can take you through the results of those. Foam Stream is essentially a heat-based weed control. I think some of you came to our trial back in 2021. It was actually launched in 2011, so it's still a relatively new product. I have got a little video for you here, just so if you don't know what this is, hopefully it'll shed some light. So I'm going to hope it's going to work. And I'll let you just watch this short video. It just gives you some understanding of what it does.
Foam Stream, powered by Weeding Tech. Weeding Tech systems kill unwanted vegetation using heat. The heat is delivered in hot water, insulated by our carefully formulated, natural and biodegradable foam, Foam Stream. That's why our systems are safe to use in all weather, around people, animals, delicate ecosystems and waterways. The Foam Stream mix flows from the lance, covering the vegetation. Surrounding seeds and spores are sterilised, leading to a net reduction in weed coverage over time. The Foam Stream blanket ensures the temperature in the hot water is retained above the 57-degree kill zone for an extended period of time. Without it, the heat is simply lost to the atmosphere. The heat penetrates the plant's waxy outer leaf layer, travels down the stem and into the root structure, cooking the plant, causing it to die or to be severely damaged. As the plant decomposes, its nutrients go back into the soil. Foam Stream, the world's most cost-effective, environmentally friendly and efficient herbicide-free solution for controlling weeds, moss and algae. To find out more, visit our website or get in touch.
Okay, so that demonstrates that a little bit nicer than how I would have explained it verbally. So hopefully that kind of clears up what that is. The third one on this list is Nature Volt, which is similar. It's high voltage electricity applied through electrodes to electrocute the unwanted weeds in vegetation. And there's a video later on in the presentation of our trial of that. Finally, weed burners. So this is a product that we actually have in-house. They also use controlled heat to kill unwanted weeds and vegetation. Propane is the fuel source on that, and most models have adjustable flame levels. So these are the kind of, or these are the products and substances that we've trialled as non-glyphosate based weed management. So I'll just take you through how we've got on. As I've mentioned, the substances were also reported in that report in 2020, but just to recap, both these products are not systemic, and I think that's an important factor of this. Systemic would mean that it goes down into the root and actually kills the weed and the growth. If the product is not systemic, it's just going to burn or kill the top layer of that plant, so it is actually going to establish again in a few weeks' time. We're simply killing the top off, or killing and harming the leaves. So both of these products, unfortunately, were not systemic. Also have their own toxicity issues in terms of safety around humans, around animals, and ultimately aren't necessarily products we would want to use. So Foam Stream, coming back to that, so a couple of pictured examples there. They came out to us at Darley Cemetery in 2021, and we had an in-house trial in Eam in 2023. And we also used it around the town hall. There is an understanding with Foam Stream that there is some future products which I'll talk you through as well. This video is about 10 minutes long. I'm not going to subject you to that. There's just a couple of points I want to demonstrate. Of course, shown kind of very much sales-based video beforehand. This is actually the visit that we had from the Foam Stream technician. So I just want to note the size of the vehicle there is a long wheelbase, so we don't actually have those in-house. To actually have the water bowser, the water container and Foam Stream on one vehicle, we'd have to hire in or purchase, I suppose, a long wheelbased vehicle. So actually for the trial we had to use two vehicles to carry the water and the Foam Stream product itself. So if I fast forward a little bit to 315, these, there we go, about there. Ooh, you get to hear the noise as well. So I pause it there. There's different lances that he's explaining that can be used for chewing gum, graffiti. So these products do have places elsewhere in street cleansing. If they were products that you wanted us to invest in further, they could have other opportunities. I don't know where the mouse has gone. There we go. Oh, sorry, it started again. Okay, so he talks through those. This is the noise it creates. And a reminder, this is in a cemetery. I will say that the masks that they're wearing are for COVID, not for the use of Foam Stream. So we are in 2021. Take yourselves back, 2021. We were all wearing masks everywhere. This is the noise that it creates, that is the foam that it creates. He's simply demonstrating the amount that comes out of the lance. So if I fast forward that a little bit more. Under the benches we found that quite useful. They're often tricky parts for us to control weeds, especially under furniture, are bolted down. It's probably hard for our mobile teams to really get under there. Although you'll see later on that the results were, not as good as we hoped. That's the amount of foam and layer and heat that would need to be around the benches. It's not damaging the furniture at all. It is loud, yes. I just want to highlight here how the area that they've covered and the amount of time that's taken. Okay, I'll fast forward this a little bit more to, we're just skipping a conversation where David is actually at this demonstration. I believe they're having a conversation of how many layers it does actually take to get rid of weeds. He was fairly sceptical on the invasive species of how many layers that would take, how many visits. There we go. The final point. Oh, you don't want to see that again. So that was the demonstration at Dale Cemetery. So we then invited them back to do a trial in Eam, and this is the area that we used foam stream during Eam. We expected to have more complaints than we actually got in terms of the noise and the foam, especially around that time. I think, perhaps they were thinking it was COVID-related foam all over the roads, but we didn't actually get as many as we thought we might do, which was a good thing. We then compared this data to an area of similar size in Yulegrave that was sprayed by the contractor at the time. So just a reminder for those that are unsure. So highways, the spraying on the highways is something that Derbyshire Dales do on behalf of County Council. So as part of an SLA agreement. So we are not in position to change this at the moment to foam stream without additional funding from ourselves, rather than it being taken from county. So we have used it, although we manage the contractor on their behalf, it isn't our land to decide what products to use on. So the area in Eam was compared to an area of similar size in Yulegrave that was sprayed by the contractor. The key findings here, just to pick out a few. Yulegrave took less than 2 hours with glyphosate compared to almost 3 days with foam stream. Photos were taken 3 weeks after each substance, and the foam stream areas needed considerable hand weeding to remove unaffected areas. Hand weeding is the key source of weed removal that we have at the moment. Yulegrave did not require further attention. I'm not saying that means that all the contractors spraying is perfect. Sometimes we do have snagging lists, but for this we saw considerable more with foam stream. Glyphosate is also sprayed by one operative on a quad bike, whereas foam stream needed actual traffic management in this case. So that's an additional vehicle, additional training, and additional trailer to carry the water that was required for that piece of equipment. The contractor actually managed to attend 18 other parishes in the same day that he visited Eam. So what's on offer? So I wanted to pop this up because there is an opportunity for a different product. What we trialled was the L12, which is in the top here, and you can see kind of the key features and the costings there as well. There is a new product available from 2026, which is this L10, which is considerably smaller, but also more mobile, which is some of the criticism that the team had or felt was a drawback of foam stream because it was so big and how many vehicles we needed to take out, etc. Before presenting this, David and I have had discussions on a place for the L10. We would be quite happy to trial that. Obviously, it's a new product that's come in for 2026. It is something that we could potentially trial in our parks. It would need to be somewhere where we'd have static staff, which is mainly our park areas, and constant access to water. So it is something that we could consider in the future, should members wish it. Some of the costings there. Obviously, we have the L12, hasn't actually gone up that much since we did the trial in 2022. That's one product. we would then need to purchase the foam stream, biodegradable foam itself, to add onto that, which I think is between 300 and 500 a month, depending on how much we used. Or we could have a rental package, which you can break down there. So Nature Vault. So we invited Nature Vault to commence a trial in Derwent Gardens, as the vegetation growth within the gravel paths proved difficult to manage without glyphosate, and our current what we have currently accessible, it wasn't hitting it either. So 2 mechanisms were trialled here: the spot unit, which is in another little video for you, and the e-weeding roller, which is the pictures on the right. So you can kind of see underneath the roller there are kind of brushes, and there's electrodes all along those brushes that electrocute the weeds as it rolls along, and it's a pushed unit. So I'll just show you a short video of the spot unit. So you kind of hear it zapping the top. Again, I suppose it's spoken about before, kind of the kill zone of how much we're actually killing. A lot of this, as you'll see afterwards, is a surface kill, so we're not getting that systemic result.
What's the steam, Sam?
Sorry?
What's the steam or the smoke?
It's the heat, it's the electricity reacting with the plant. As soon as it hits it, it creates a little bit of smoke. It's not particularly dangerous, it's the heat coming from the electricity. So a lot of these are kind of heat-based products. So this is the area of Derwent Gardens that was trialled. It was about 3,000 square metres. We did receive an 18-page report from this trial. I wouldn't want to bore you with that. I can put more of that in the main report should you wish. However, we saw little results to come back with to claim that it was successful. Again, that lack of systemic nature. It's estimated that use of glyphosate in this area would need 4 knapsacks, so a total of 1 litre of glyphosate would have done that area in about 2 or 3 hours. This trial took about most of the day, about 6 or 7 hours, and a suggested 4 treatments a year, because we're coming at these areas quite problematic after 6 years of little weed interference. So that would be the price. It would be £6,250 for that one park. To compare that to glyphosate, we spray the whole 900 miles of district for £14,000, and that's simply one park. So just very quickly, I'm conscious of time. The flame weeder is something that we have in-house. Again, it was just something I just wanted to give you a basis on, in that we do use other things. Of course, it does create more of a flame, so it does create a little bit of anxiety with the public if they do see it being used. So it doesn't get pulled out very often, but it doesn't need necessarily additional certifications. It does eradicate with enough heat, but obviously it's slow. It is portable. There's some pros and cons on there. I think particular ones to look at is kind of, I suppose, the pros of the no soil disruption, just to counteract some of the complaints on glyphosate, but also the cons. You wouldn't be using that on very dry land. You wouldn't be wanting to use that in high density parks, for example. So it doesn't come out very often. We do have one in-house, and it is something else we do use where we can. That has really been a short snapshot of what the report will be in March. I am happy to take questions. I was asked to create some recommendations based on the information that we have. My recommendations would be this: for the Council to note the trials undertaken by the Clean and Green team and the intention to continue to trial new weed control products that become available, and particularly that L10 that we think could be worth a trial should members wish, but it would never be able to support the amount of area. It might be able to combat some of the local areas that we have with static staff. Second one would be that the Council reinstates the use of glyphosate for the purpose of weed management in cemeteries, closed churchyards, problematic footpaths and the Town Hall. Use in play areas and green flag parks will remain prohibited. What do I mean by problematic footpaths? It's those that are seeing that weeds are taken over with limiting access, safety or structure of the footpath. and I'm happy for as much consultation as needed. I'm happy for before and after pictures, and of course we're happy to provide data as often as members wish. So really, finally, it's any questions from members that we can take, and I've got David on the technical side.
Thank you very much, Samantha. That's really very clear. And
Okay, thank you.
the questions, David first, and then Sue.
Are we going to have comments? Sorry. Are we going to have comments as well, or is it just questions?
I don't know.
I'll give your comments as well at the same time, David.
Do you want me to wait for the questions?
No, carry on.
Right. Just to reiterate, I've worked with glyphosate pretty well 40 years. There has never been any conclusive proof that glyphosate and non-Hodgkin lymphoma are connected. It's approved by the World Health Organization, it's approved by the American EPA. It's not approved by the EU because the EU don't have the decision to make on glyphosate. The decision on glyphosate is made by the European Commission, and every member state of the EU has the choice. But of the names of the countries given on that screen, half of them have banned it for domestic use, which is a crucial point, because people who use it professionally understand it, respect it, and know how to take precautions. Domestic users just pull it out of the shed and spray it where they feel like. So that's the essence of the strong point behind that is that we have trained personnel who will know how to use it, who will adhere to the safety restrictions, the equipment, etc. And to do that makes it completely safe, with no worries at all. The point Sam made about systemic is very crucial, because I've seen the foam stream work, and basically I could have done it quicker with a hoe and made a better job. It removes the surface, and their claim that it goes down into the roots and to extreme areas of the plant it's just not true. And the electric thing again. If you've got weeds that produce a strong waxy cuticle and have a large taproot, such as docks and thistles, they just shrug it off. They just laugh it off because it doesn't affect them. There's no effect. It's just a waste of time and money. So I know I'm banging my head on a brick wall here, but I would advocate that we use glyphosate wherever it's needed to be used. I mean, we've seen, I'm sure everybody here has seen the effect on roadsides, on verges, on pavements of the weeds that are totally out of control. Just as a conclusion, it's really quite fortunate that Facebook didn't exist in 1936, because Bayer AG, who are the current owners of Roundup, who manufacture the Roundup product, put onto the market a chemical that you may have heard of. It's called aspirin. So they don't demonise Bayer. They've done a lot of good, and their sort of philosophy is not to produce poisons that cause cancer. They produce the right kind of material. So I believe, and I strongly feel that we shouldn't demonise glyphosate. We should use it safely. We should use it as directions on the bottles declare, and restrict it to using only trained personnel. And thank you, my thoughts.
Thank you very much, David. Sue, would you like to go? And then Simon.
The point, obviously, as David has made, that if it's used properly with the right people, then obviously that is the safest way. And the countries that are banning it, if they've banned it globally in the fact that they've got rid of it off the shelves, there isn't Roundup on their shelves, whereas in our country we've still got it. Anybody can go into any shop and buy Roundup, so I just don't see the difference other than the knowledge that, as David has just alluded to, that people just use it willy-nilly without reading the full instructions, rather than it being done properly, like the council would have to do. So, and looking at what's been on there, it just seems a long, laborious job that's not going to work anyway. And we all know that the glyphosate does work. So, you know, to me, I feel that, you know, for the benefit of all, as long as it's used properly, I think we should bring it back. If it was banned completely from the country, i.e. not in any shops or anything else, then obviously we'd have to do a U-turn. But while it's there for anybody to use, why can't we use it properly in the right way? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sue. Simon Ripton, then Peter, and then Laura.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Sam. That was really helpful. Obviously, the councillors have talked about, the human aspects. Could you just talk about what you know about the impact on wildlife and nature, and what the science says about that? And then I have a second question, but do that bit first.
Yeah, do you want me to do that one first? Okay. Yes, of course. It's interesting, actually. As I said at the beginning, a lot of the literature is on the agricultural use and how much that's using. As you might know, we've got a biodiversity project where we're trying to, you know, bring back the local wildlife. When you go to contractors or you go to best practice for these things, they're opting to use glyphosate to strip the areas of, you know, non-native species to then allow the native species to come back. So glyphosate has its place in the environmental world. We also have a stewardship with SSSI sites, which actually specifically ask us to use glyphosate-based products in, again, invasive species and non-native species to protect those areas as they're deemed to be protected. That's not spraying, that's injecting into the trunks, and that's, again, through trained personnel. So it does have its place in that, in its use. So we do see, you know, ecologists, environmentalists suggesting that we use it in certain areas. Of course, elected members never banned us from using that in 2020. There was an understanding that for invasive species and non-native species that we would continue to use that product. So I suppose that's an area of the discussion. Does that answer your question?
Ish, I guess I was just trying to understand, you know, what the science says about particular insects and other creatures that interact with this product. What the long-term effects are.
I can expand on that, Sam, if you want to.
Okay.
The way, sorry for butting in, but the way glyphosate works is it's plant specific, because what it does is it actually blocks the root uptake of trace elements. So basically what it does is it starves the plant to death. It's not corrosive, it's not toxic, it just affects the root absorbance of mainly trace elements from the vital trace elements for the plant from the soil. So it's not killing anything else, it's just simply stemming the uptake of nutrients.
Yeah, well, the second question was, I mean, we had a bit of a debate about this in our sort of Labour group, and we didn't come to a conclusive position, but I think the conclusion we did come to was that we don't know enough about the science, and we don't know enough about what residents might be concerned about with regards to the science. So maybe when you do the report, if you can really sort of bring that out, that might be really helpful, because it is clearly a complicated area, and I'm not sure everybody feels equipped to understand it. Thank you.
So Peter,
Thank you. Sorry. Go on.
Did you want to say, come back on that?
Can I?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you. I think that's a really good point to make. I think, which is why I brought up, and hopefully I haven't, demonised the product at all. I was, in my attempt to show the particular case in 2019, it was to show where this literature has come from. Before then, a lot of people would have heard of glyphosate. They perhaps would have heard of Roundup and weed killers and things, but we weren't using glyphosate as a word. People didn't know what that was, and I think that's kind of taken us down, kind of a negative stream. I think it's important to show the science, and I'm happy to add some more from the presentation into the report to help understand how glyphosate works and the science on that.
Thank you, Chair. Two areas really. If I can just pick up on Councillor Chapman's point. I am a biochemist. I thought actually it was a phosphoenol pyruvate mimic in a particular enzyme which blocked an amino acid synthesis pathway, and that was how it was functioning. But I don't know, I'll better read my bit again. The bottom line is that I think actually, and I agree with David in this respect, that glyphosate, the molecule, has a clean bill of health. Part of the problem appears to be the extras that get into the various formulations. And so I would like to see, if we have a policy, it was linked to a proprietary product for which we knew everything else that was there. It's particularly the surfactants to help to wet the leaves, which could be themselves having a problem. And now in the context of problems, then if we say it's fine, it's slightly interesting that we then say, but you can't use it near where there are going to be people. Because actually, that's a kind of doublespeak, isn't it? It's either safe or it isn't. And, you know, what is our position on that? As I say, it appears that the bulk of the evidence is that the molecule on its own is perfectly safe. If I come to a question, sorry, there was one. We have the contract with County for highways. The 30 litres per annum that you quoted, that would just be for DDDC properties treatment. How does that figure compare with what you would use per annum on the DCC contract?
I can add that into the report. It is more because the contractor is covering 900 miles of road. Obviously, it does differ year to year because it's not simply a spray on the road, it's driving down the roads and finding where those spots are. But I can put that into the report. It is more.
It was just a sort of question of balance as to, because it's the same people. I mean, in one sense, we are concerned about the operatives, although, as I say, the molecule itself appears to be innocent in terms of this cancer link. What I did discover in my research was that it is associated, if you get it in runoff, not on land, because its half-life in soil is relatively quick. It does get degraded in soil and it's no longer active. But hard surface runoff into waterways can or is believed to cause an issue with amphibians. And that might be something that needs to be borne in mind in terms of the mode of operation which we might develop. Because, I come back to this point, the molecule itself does seem to be okay. But nevertheless, there has been this concern over many years which might actually be associated with the other things that are present in proprietary products. And that, I think, would be worth kind of factoring in to what we decide to do, and therefore, if you could, into your report. Yeah, I think there is some data. And to come back to, it's been described in what I read as a 1 in 100 year discovery in terms of its effectiveness. It's an incredible product, but it does come with some associations of things not really working quite well. I do not dispute for one moment its cost effectiveness. I think actually Brighton and Hove did some data, and you can find that on the web, in terms of the almost orders of magnitude, or 2 orders of magnitude, you know, cost effectiveness difference between that and these other methods, and you've hinted at that today. And you can't ignore that. But on the other hand, it is not entirely free of any downside. And I think we need to bear that in mind when we weigh up the pros and cons. Thank you.
Can I just ask you a further question on that, Peter? Because if it's being used on hard surfaces, the water runoff will be into drains and end up in the Derwent or other river. If it's used on riverbanks, there would be the similar problem. So are you suggesting that a constraint on use, we should be putting in a constraint on use to avoid that sort of runoff?
as I say, the research I've done is not in depth, but they did mention one species of shrimp or something that did seem to be, to some extent, affected by it, or by a proprietary product, possibly by. You can see the problem in how do you test all of this. You have proprietary products, there is a consequential effect. Is it associated with glyphosate or the surfactants which were with the glyphosate when you sprayed?
And associated with that, I mean, in terms of Derbyshire Dales, we wouldn't be using it for agriculture very much because of the nature of our agriculture. It would be, but you can imagine potential runoff in the Norfolk Broads or into the Norfolk Broads, for example.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That there does seem to be some documented research which suggests that in waterways there is an issue, although I don't know that there is a complete balance of literature which gives the full picture. So it's a tricky area, and of course we've got all of this against the background of a significant prejudice in some quarters against introducing things willy-nilly. You know, why are we killing all these plants anyway? You know, weeds are just a plant in the wrong place. I know that's a slightly extreme view, but some people do hold that.
I don't think Mare's Tail would be in that category. Laura, would you like to come in here?
Well, firstly, I agree with you, Peter. I don't think the weeds in our area are out of control at the moment. I mean, obviously there are areas which need to be weed-free for safety reasons, but I don't think we need weed-free perfection in the way that we might have expected to in previous years. I think perhaps we need to learn to live with weeds for a number of reasons, including biodiversity. But my question anyway was, do we know what is being used in places where they have banned glyphosate, like Erewash and Glastonbury and places?
An array of the things we've done today. Some of them are using foam stream. A lot are hand weeding, and that's what we're doing at the moment with the amount of resource. You are able to stay on top of it. Mechanical weed rippers, again, we've got one of those as well. So it's kind of a combination of what we've had a look at today. I suppose in terms of where things work and where things don't, we've always got to take into consideration kind of climate, resources, the amount of resource that you have is going to be ultimately have a direct relationship with how much you're allowed to, or that you're able to get out and remove. We have a lot of community support in the areas that go around and support us with the removal of weeds as well. So, but I can put more of that in the report if there's direct things you wanted to hear.
I think it would be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Peter, would you like to go?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Roundup, he said certain areas that make a benefit. Only what other certain areas you recommended to spray with Roundup?
So we'd actually use a product called Gollop rather than Roundup, but yes, a similar glyphosate-based product. So I would say bringing it back to areas where we were using it before. Similarly, cemeteries, closed churchyards, these are delicate footpaths, and again, this is for the protection of assets in terms of paths and protection of resources in terms of, we've got the regeneration of Ashbourne, we've got the bus station around the corner. It only takes a few weeks for these, brand new ground services to be having with weeds. I completely agree. I'm an advocate of the biodiversity project that we have. I'm very proud of the work that the team have been able to create. I do think we do need to be able to live a little bit more in balance. However, I do appreciate the need for less growth in areas where we need to protect and don't have the funding ultimately to keep replacing paths. So it's cemeteries, closed churchyards, problematic footpaths around the town hall, and sports pitches.
Because I had an enormous lot of complaints last year from residents complaining the weed was out of control, and it's getting embarrassing really, because you don't know what to tell them really. We don't use weed killer anymore, and a lot of residents say why not use Roundup if it's used properly in certain areas. So it's probably the best, might be the better way to go.
Yeah, I've been a couple of walk rounds around Wirksworth, and I think the the network of smaller paths from the
That's
housing
right.
again is not
Yeah,
is not
it's
considerable
like a
to our weed rippers, or generally a general sweeper
Yeah.
can't get up there. So a substance-based product would be better to support that. And there's steps, of course, in those networks. So yes, I've been around those.
Yeah, thank you.
Samantha, has there been any work done on alternative grouting for weed suppression? So I can imagine a different chemical formulation of the grouting might be less likely to support weeds and would therefore reduce the weeding issue.
There are some. I think some, in short, some of those are much more expensive. I think those are the horticulturists in the room know if a seed gets in an area, as soon as that gets a drip of water or even a bit of debris, it's going to grow. They're quite tough our plants and our beds. But David, did you have anything to add to that one? I think.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that what we've adapted since we've stopped using glyphosate is a different weed management strategy. So we start with removing detritus and soil so the weeds don't have the opportunity to grow, ideally. Where we can, we use a physical weed removal, which is either hand weeded or the weed ripper. But there are circumstances where these sort of strategies fall short. So gravel paths, which is notorious for weeds germinating and growing in soil forms in, you can't use a physical piece of equipment like the weed ripper because of the stones and detritus building up. So it's a strategy rather than there's not a one golden bullet that will replace or do. It's adapting how we've gone from when I started putting down using weed killers was just the default, and we've had to develop a strategy of tackling weeds at different points of growth, from seed to seedlings to fully grown weeds.
Okay, thank you.
A comment, Chair. We've had various parts of Ashbourne, I know Samantha knows, outside the town hall, Church Street. Various problems with weeds growing in the cobbles, and members of the public have taken it in their own hands to spray it. So I'd rather see Derbyshire Dales with a controlled spraying regime than members of the public doing it off their own back. Okay.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Simon, come back.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a scientist, but I am an economist, and I guess the mile high view on this is that if I go back to my grandfather, I mean, he was a groundskeeper on a significant publicly owned building, which for years he and a team managed by doing this stuff by hand. And decades ago, that's what we did. We employed people to do it. And as a society, we've taken the decision to stop employing people, and we do have millions and millions of people who are economically inactive, and effectively outsource this to the chemical industry with potentially uncertain outcomes. And I'm not asking you to do anything with that information. It's just, it is a choice we make, and there are other alternatives other than chemicals and pieces of equipment.
I think that goes for a number of different industry sectors that promote certain characteristics and then provide some sort of framework for creating stopping the nasty bits happening because of it. I'm thinking of the fast food industry for one. Okay, anybody want to? David, you want to come back?
Yeah, I'll tell my customer outside York who's got 2,000 acres of wheat that he's got to hand weed it.
That's not our subject of today's discussion. And I think there are a variety of different reasons, I think, aren't there, for using glyphosate on cereal products, including just drying the cereal off so that it can be harvested at an appropriate time.
It's the biggest used herbicide in Derbyshire, glyphosate.
Is it? Even, but it'll be less than that in the more in the wheat growing areas of East Anglia.
Why would it be? I mean,
The main use of glyphosate, because it's non-selective, is that if you're putting one crop following another, you destroy every weed, so that none of those weeds come back into the next crop. and it's just it's the property of glyphosate that it isn't selective, so that knocks everything out.
Okay, there are recommendations here. Is there anything that we would like to say, we would like to include in Samantha's report to council when this goes to council? It is going to council, is it not the Environment Committee? C&E, to C&E. Okay. Would anybody like to suggest anything we would want to add to this report?
Chair, I think already some comments have been brought forward. Are they going to be put into the report?
So, as a recommendation, can we ask Samantha to note the comments that have been made by committee members?
Chair, if I may, can I just run through the list? I've made notes as we've gone through to make sure we don't miss anything. Impact on the environment and wildlife was noted by Councillor Ripton. Ideally, the report will cover the science to inform the public of the product that we're using. Also trying to understand what is in the product in addition to glyphosate. The comparison of DDC use as opposed to county council. The issue of use on hard surfaces. Also from Councillor Maelstrom there, got what is being used where glyphosate is banned. We cover that point in the report. Be explicit in the report where we would want to use it. And that's the list that I've got, unless the members have got. Councillor Shelley.
Could we put in something about the possible connection or the risks in relation to being close to watercourses? I think that was one of the things that Councillor Dobbs mentioned particularly, which struck me.
And can we also have just a line in there, just reminding people that we could actually just get more used to having weeds around and change our expectations as to what our urban areas look like.
Okay. Can we also note the point that Danny made about the removing soil, so removing detritus from footpaths and other areas as a strategy, so that it's clear that we are doing something about weed control if we're not using chemicals.
This comes back to taking note of the instructions on the bottle, because on the bottle, one of the main the main points on the bottle: do not use near waterways. Leave a buffer strip between waterways, and that's back to the point that we've got personnel who do use those instructions as they are put down on the containers. So why we have to reiterate it? That's saying we don't have faith in our operatives to use it. So we don't need to make the point of waterways, because it's part of the whole raison d'etre behind glyphosate that you don't use it near waterways. And what I would also like putting on the report is the one single sentence that there has never been any conclusive evidence that glyphosate is associated with non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Would anybody like to comment on David's last point? Okay, well, I think I'm a bit worried about that being hostage to fortune. It may never yet, but we don't know about what would happen in the future. So I'd rather not. But as we're not experts in this, so I don't think we can actually say that.
Yeah.
Did you want to say something?
It's just a comment I've made before. I mean, that is the evidence. However, Bayer have paid out 9.8 billion to avoid getting taken to court and the associated publicity. So, yes, you're absolutely right, I think, David, that is the balance of the science. However, I would hate us to be taken to court for that sort of sum.
It only takes one of our staff to get non-Hodgkinson's lymphoma, and if we've said it, there's no evidence, then I think we would be at risk. So I don't think we can say that. As far as keeping, we accept that people do, but what came out in this meeting was a concern about waterways, and I think what we're doing is the report should reflect the concern that we have about waterways. So I don't think there's any harm in saying that. In addition, noting also that it is part of the instructions on the container. Okay, can we therefore note this report or this presentation? Thank Samantha for giving it, and note the recommendations that we've, or the comments that we've made as Ash has listed them. Can I have somebody to move that, perhaps, just to formally complete this? Thank you, Anthony, and Laura seconding it. So all those in favour of noting on those, okay? Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mitchell.
Chair,
that's very useful.
Can I just comment while the team are here? And
Yes.
I'd just like to thank the fantastic work that the team did for Stroke Tide last week, and the fantastic job you made.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So we now move on to discussing the performance review. So we're now over to Claire Allen.
Thank you, Chair. Michael's just assisting me with the IT a second, so I will start speaking. This is the Q3 performance report, so this is covering from the 1st of October to the 31st of December 2025. If I can reflect on the reporting schedule, so we send Q2 to Council to be a 6-monthly report on progress of the corporate plan and KPIs, and in the intervening period, Q1 and Q3 from Scrutiny, and then we will sum up the year-end report, and that will then go to Council to formally sign off the year. So I will just go through the report. We've brought this report to Scrutiny to demonstrate the progress, the good performance, and highlight what areas are needing improvement. And we have outturn performance against the Derbyshire Dales plan, the corporate plan projects for Q3, and then also our key performance indicators. The Appendix 1 is very, very comprehensive. That runs to about 30 pages. So what I was going to suggest is I'll talk you through the highlights as picked out in this report, and then if you do have any questions, I can address specific projects or points in the appendix. So the Derbyshire Dales plan was adopted in 2024. It started with 98 key projects. We added 2 further projects in May 2025, and at the end of the first year, we completed 24, and the vast majority were on track. In August of 2025, the Progressive Alliance leadership did actually decide to tighten the focus further on what were the key initiatives, and 19 projects were cancelled or stopped. So we are talking about, I think at the moment, just Debbie's on a different page to me. There are about 50 live projects now going ahead. The KPIs, we measure those and have done for a number of years, going right back to best value performance indicators, and they are our kind of day-to-day service and numerical stats. So paying benefits claims, determining planning applications, as well as things like collecting council tax and answering calls. So there's information on those in Appendix 2 as well. So just to move on. So this table gives our general overall performance now for Q3. So in total, 7 projects have been completed. There were 2 specifically this year, and there's 7 in total as we're at the end of Q3. 25 projects are on track, and 18 are on track with some small concerns. So in total, 53% of projects are either on track or on track with slight concerns, and only 5 projects out of all of them are off track, so a small 6%. You can see there 25% have been stopped, and there's 4% awaiting start, which is where performance or targets have been staggered over different years. A very positive progress and performance, and also reflected in the KPIs. Of our 25 KPIs, 48% were achieved straight away. There was 24% 6 not achieved, but when we do look at that further, these are often by tiny, less than a percentage point where things have not quite gone to target. And there is a small number of the KPIs that are awaiting data. Waste data in particular is always provided in arrears. So the 2 projects that were completed this quarter was the Traveller Site Finding Commission and the Affordable Homes appointing a consultant. It's worth noting that it might be more accurate to call these project stages, in the sense that it's a piece of work that has been completed, but there will be more work to follow. And these may then be set up as new, different projects where we can track the progress in more detail, rather than just keeping it as one thing. So they are completed, but in both cases there are ongoing actions. And 4.3 gives some of the highlights of the 25 projects that are on track, or the 18 that are on track with concern, and just talks you through a lot of the work that has been done in terms of there's been work going on flooding. As I said, Affordable Homes is carrying on even though part of the work's been completed. There's an update on the Ashbourne Reborn works that are going ahead. Still working on community-led biodiversity projects and working on keeping the Green Flag Awards for the parks. The public space protection order with focus on barbecues and open fires, that's been completed and that is going ahead. Quite interestingly, the report on glyphosate alternatives said that the Clean and Green manager has been asked to provide an overview of the findings to Scrutiny Committee, and she has done. So I'll tick that one off for in quarter 4, say achieved. I'm sad she's gone actually, because the Clean and Green indicators are wonderful, and I really hope she could hear me congratulate her that she's gone. So the 5 projects that are off track. The solar farm, I will say, I've read the update, I'm not an expert, I think it's trying to say it's not possible. 2 megawatts, as per the Clear Lead report, is not possible until 2037. 949 kilowatt array may be possible, but we need more feasibility studies. So that one is off track while further work continues. And there's also another climate change and CPJ 144 renewable energy generation plans. Lots of these were dependent on getting our new Director of Corporate Projects and Performance, and also our new climate change manager and team in place. So while they're off track, there's a reason and there's mitigations in place, which is obviously once people are recruited, the work can continue. The EV chargers in our car park has sadly also been off track last time. But there is a lot of information in the appendix about what's happening with those projects. And then the master plan for the Ashbourne Airfield, phases 1 and 2, I think that's essentially that the timelines have changed, so they are slightly off track, but they are now working to bring that back on track. And if I keep going into the KPIs, as I said, I put it at the top, I was so pleased. Sam has, behind the scenes, our Clean and Green manager, Samantha Grisman, has said to me, since we started tracking their progress through the KPIs, that she knew they were doing better than our figures were showing. She knew it. She knew on the ground, she could see the results, and our figures that we were getting out of the CRM system were not backing it up. So over these last 3 quarters, we've done a lot of work to refine how the computer system reflects the work they do. And it's really pleasing now to see that what she said all along has come true. 95.56% of fly tipping incidents was resolved within time. So were 79.17% of street cleansing and litter incidents, and 81.25% of dog fouling and needles incidents were resolved within time. So if we think back to, I don't know if you can remember the first set of results that came through, it was kind of 40% and 37%, very disappointing. So it's pleasing to see that we've streamlined our reporting and made it more specific, and it's actually now showing the progress and the performance that we thought was there. And there's a number of really excellent points there. In the whole quarter, we received 5,970 calls, and of those calls, only 13 people dropped the call or cut off and hung up before they were answered. So that's it's a rate that any major call centre would be very happy with, to see 0.2%. Processing housing benefit, council tax benefit is, as usual, at an excellent level, well above target. And an indicator for myself, the percentage of active corporate plan projects on track is at 90%, so everything in the corporate plan is proceeding well. There was some less successful results where we saw 0% of major planning applications decided on time. However, this is one case of one, so the very small numbers involved means that it's given quite a dramatic result. And in the opposite case, 100% of major planning applications were overturned on appeal, and this was 2 cases of 2. So we've got some slightly dramatic looking results which are more due to small numbers. And the percentage of council tax and non-domestic rates, they were 2 of the KPIs that came through as not achieved. But if we do have a look at Appendix 2, it's actually tiny in terms of what they didn't get. So I'll leap straight to that. So the target was, I'll have to make it a bit bigger. The target was 90%, and they had 89.03%. A little bit small there in terms of 87% with an outturn of 82.93, but over the year all these services are confident that they'll bring that position back by the end of the year. And this database does show us very colourfully how well a lot of these services are doing in the services they're providing.
Claire, could you move your microphone a bit closer?
Oh, sorry, I do apologise. This is the only place in my life where I'm told I'm too quiet. I was actually going to come to the end because I was going to say the Appendix 1 is 30 pages, so it would be probably more prudent for me to say if you have any specific questions, then if you want to raise them, but I won't go through it page by page. It is essentially just elaborating on what's shown in the highlights of the report. So thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anthony Bates first. Then
Yes.
Peter's.
Sorry, Appendix 1, projects. 19 projects cancelled or stopped. Do we know what those projects are? Have we got a list of them?
I think the list was provided in the Q2 reports because this was done in August, so it was brought into the Q2 reporting. It was mainly things where events had overtaken. So, for example, it was things that just couldn't get going because we didn't have staff, or it was projects that were going to be really impacted strongly by local government reorganisation. So the Progressive Alliance suggested a list of things that could be attention directed elsewhere, and I believe this was agreed properly through council procedures at the time.
Peter?
It's exactly the same thing. I was going to elaborate, actually. It sort of does the council a disservice. A lot of them were simply business as usual. It was just things that were given a project title, which is exactly what the council does all the time, and there was no real point in doing that. And a significant number of the rest were just aggregated together to make a smaller number. So the thing was carrying on. One notable one, I think, was the one that Councillor O'Brien drew attention to, and in fact it was the very same project was continuing in with a slightly different heading, with a slightly different CPJ number. And my question that I was going to ask was concerned with the dashboard on planning. You've written under some of them, temporarily suspended. Now, those of us on planning committee, actually, we did have some really very encouraging data on enforcement. And is the problem, well, could you explain temporarily suspended and why? And is it not possible to incorporate the same data that we had in our last but one planning meeting, where the reduction in the number of outstanding enforcement issues was tremendous? Thank you.
I'm relaying the information from, as told by the planning team. They were getting the reports and the figures that we wanted from the uniform system, but when they ran the reports, it wasn't reflecting what they knew to be the case on the ground. And there was lots of things that, for example, they knew had been closed and an inquiry, an incident had been dealt with, but the system was recording multiple ways of closing. So there was not just IT issues that were making the figures unreliable, but there was business processing issues as well. So some people who would come were trained to close things a certain way on the system, some people closing it a different way, and it was making the figures really difficult. So I know that they have been working hard on this. I believe the last note from Steve was that they would like to restart the KPIs for 26-27 when they think that they will have resolved a lot of these issues with uniform and also with the processing that supports putting the figures in the system. So if they are able to give us useful figures, that is great, and we'll take it as soon as we can. We were on hold waiting for them to finish that work, ready for Q1 of next year.
Thank you, Claire.
Can I just add in there? I mean, Gavin Treen did actually say exactly the same thing in the planning meeting. So when he was presenting his report, so I think you and he are thinking along the same lines.
Okay, just expanding on perhaps the comment that you had from Sam. I do feel that in many cases the software is generating not the gut feeling of officers. And I think this is a bit of a problem if we present to the public this picture, and in fact it's not the case. In fact, curiously, a lot of the greens are projects that are completed but actually didn't deliver anything that we wanted, but they are over, so they get a green. And then equally they're projects which are red or amber, which are kind of a bit behind schedule, but actually are doing great stuff, and will deliver excellent outcomes eventually. Just they're slightly off track for the moment. So I think we do need to treat this with the limitations that software often has. Thank you.
I reserve the right to come back on that point that you made, but first of all, Peter Slack, and then Laura, did you, or was it you?
I just would like to comment just in relation to that. I mean, I suppose it depends whether this report is a measure of how well council officers are doing their job, in which case it's great, or is it a measure of how much of our administration's programme has been achieved, and that's a different thing, isn't it? So I suppose when interpreting these statistics, we need to be clear exactly what they're for.
That's a good point. Peter, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Claire, for the report, a well-written report. I do agree with Laura that the officers are putting facts down and doing their job properly, but looking at certain ones, same as the solar farm, 2037, it's not feasible to go really once taking off the list. And the slowness, especially in my ward, of EVs coming into use is disturbing. Other areas, the Corder Quarry, for instance, it's bogged down again, isn't it? But for a long time now, and it's not really achieving what they said when they first built the flats. They're going to put houses straight away, and that's going back 5 or 6 years. So that's being bogged down, isn't it? Really, and Yeah, HVOs rather. We need to get on top of it and move forward with those really. So it's not the officers, it's we not the PA really not doing the job properly really, isn't it? You know, sorry to be critical, but we do need to do better. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Peter. I think that's salutary. Roger, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Claire, again for this. I think you have an unenviable role and position doing this. And the more I look at these, I don't want to be critical. It's certainly not of you, but it may be the task that you've been set to do. So this report is, yes, it is a public report, but it's also for the benefit of ourselves as members, so we can try and see some of the wood for the trees in what is a hugely complex organisation, doing all sorts of cross-cutting things. I'm personally now finding this kind of report quite difficult to get value out of, and I wonder, that this may be a bit radical, but I wonder whether there may be some scope, some sense in streamlining it further, so that we don't have to have it every quarter, but where we do have it. I mean, there are some things. Perhaps the chart at the end with the sort of the dashboard things, that's relatively easy to absorb. I mean, maybe that could be done every quarter, but there are some bits where you start to see a degree of repetition from quarter to quarter, and there isn't the clarity of action, which I think perhaps. Which perhaps Peter alluded to there, that would enable us as members to see the way through. And I'll just give 2 or 3 examples, if I may. So one is the solar farm. And if you look at the main body of the report, it refers you to Appendix 1. But the text is almost identical. So this is one of my great bugbears with council reports, when I read virtually the same thing in the main body and then in the appendix. We don't like reading things twice, I can tell you. I'm sure you don't either. But the point there is that it says a costed feasibility study may be required to proceed. What it doesn't give us is any sense of ownership. Who is going to be doing that and by when? And that is really important for us, because otherwise it's just lost in the miasma of wordage, I'm afraid. You know, that sentence could be repeated at the following quarter. So there isn't an officer responsible there, and I don't want to pin blame on people, but with things that are as important as that, we need to know how that action is going to be taken forward and by whom. The renewable energy plan, which is CPJ 144. Again, I only raise that because it says, and again, unenviable, because presumably you're writing this and you're collating this with information from different people at different time. But I can see it says there, requires further consideration when the new Director of Corporate Projects and Performance joins the organisation. But she's sitting next to you. So that may well be a timing question about when the report was put together. But I come back to that. It may be there's more benefit in us having this kind of thing at a slightly more distanced pace, but with more actionable actions than having it so the timing is misaligned. And then the fleet decarbonisation.
Can Claire come back?
Yes,
sorry,
of course she can. And this is not critical of you. It's the unenviable task you've been set.
Thank you, members. I have to say, in the short period of time that I've been here since the 5th of January, having a look at these KPIs and reviewing them and the key performance indicators has been a priority. I absolutely agree that there's quite a lot of repetition, which is something that we need to look at. I also I'll just give a little bit of context around some of those ones that are behind. Obviously, we are reporting on the previous quarter, so we are always slightly out of date by the time we come and present these reports to you. So just to give an overview of the climate change team that now sits in my area, they had significant change last year. The climate manager was appointed in December, so that is Celine Stratton. Celine is now, who was the energy efficiency, is now the climate manager, and we've also got 2 new members of staff. So I can reassure you that those priorities on there that are behind, below target, are now the key areas of work for that team to take that forward, and I can provide updates in future on those. The EV chargers is something that I know that they've been working in collaboration with the County Council, the solar farm. I agree there's some additional work that needs to be done on that, and the climate action strategy is currently now out for some quotes to be refreshed. It was a piece of work that was done in 2020 with a path to net zero. Obviously that was taking some key projects that need to be delivered to achieve net zero, such as the solar farm, and if things like that are behind or aren't going to come forward, then we need to understand what that means for us as a district. So completely take on board that when I've been looking at these, they're not actually projects, some of the things that are in here, and what I mean by that, they don't have a start and an end date. So a project by its definition is delivering something, and I think what we need to do is relook at the wording of some of these and make them timely, make them more productive, so that when they come to you as members, you know there's going to be an outcome, there'll be a report, and there's a decision. So what I would say is that we're coming up towards the end of the year. We will be doing Q4, but at that time that comes to council, there may be some proposals to amend the wording of these to make them more understandable, relatable, and achievable. Thank you.
Do you want to come back, Roger?
Yes, just very briefly. That's really good to hear. Thank you, Dom. I mean, there may well be a case, I think, for separating those things you correctly identify as projects from what could be termed business as usual. Yeah. And it may be that the business as usual ones are the ones that the charts at the end, the dashboard, might be more appropriate for. Yeah.
Can I come in there, because I think there's some good examples of the sort of thing that I think number 9 on page 9, delivery of the Ashbourne-Reborn levelling up fund. Yeah. I think that shows progress, outstanding issues, and when those outstanding issues are going to be resolved. It doesn't say who is going to resolve them, but it actually meets all those requirements. And the update is that National Grid is going to start work on 2nd of March. So, and they think it'll take 3 weeks, I think it was, to complete. So by that time, Ashbourne-Reborn should be, the public realm work should actually be completed, more or less.
Do you mind if I...
Claire, yes, please come back in.
Just to address the point Councillor Shelley made about stats and data and so on, we do very thoroughly check all of the data. It's all got background files, and it's all checked. It's all securely stored and recorded. I understand what you're saying about sometimes the managers are unsure about the figures coming out of the systems, but that is part of the checking process. So all of the managers, when they get their reports, will check and think, does that look reasonable? Does that match what the team have been doing? Does that match the level of work that we've seen come through? So it's not a surprise to me that managers have come back in certain cases and said, I don't think this report has quite shown what we're doing, and that was exactly the case with Sam. And she said, you're not picking up that an emergency will be out within 2 hours. It's all in one big, giant basket of 10-day reporting. So that was when we'd changed the reports to be more specific, and it gave the results they were looking for. But yes, in terms of the uniform planning reports, they knew that the system was not showing what they knew to be the situation on the ground. So at that point, we can't publish those figures because they're not reliable. We need to take them away and make sure that they are, 100% robust before they're released as our official data. I was just going to also make the point that this is a kind of a snapshot overview of all of the work that is undergoing. So it's trying to bring together the whole remit of performance across all the directorates and across all the services. So there is some duplication in this report, but there is also duplication where you will go to a committee and you will get a much more specific, in-depth report on that project or that issue. So yes, it might be the case that we have like quite a vague text saying this will happen, but that will mean that somewhere in another committee or in another arena there will be much more detail where it will be spelt out what's going on, and this is more just to try and bring together an overview of everything. So yeah, I don't like duplication either, so I don't ask people to recopy all of their reports and things.
Okay.
Thank you.
Before I bring you in, David and Ash, can I just say that we've thought about using this report as a means of identifying scrutiny projects that we would like to undertake, and I think we would have to acknowledge that you can't go into all the background details associated with a particular subject area or project in this report. All you can do is highlight those that look as if they may need some further work, and I think that's it's excellent at signposting those areas. So thank you, Claire. Was it Simon? Was it you? No, David, was it?
Thanks, Chair. Is it okay for me to comment on an individual project?
Yeah?
Yeah, because it happens to be on the screen at the same time. It just needs to come down a touch because it's number 7, if we could. If anybody's in control. Thank you. Yeah, it's the PSPO with the barbecues and fires, and that's down as complete, obviously, but it then states in the update, when the PSPO is completed, we will then work with partners for the signage and locations. I'd like to suggest, if you're not doing that already, that one of the partners you work with would be the Most for the Future partnership under who are obviously part of the Peak District National Park, because there ain't no partnership anywhere that knows the moorlands better than those guys. So, yeah, I was just saying possibly we could, as a partnership, a very, very good partner for that work would be Most for the Future partnership, because nobody knows the moorlands around here better than they do. And I'd be happy to work as liaison with them, as I chaired them for 8 years. So,
I think that has to go through. Ash, would that come through you? Yeah. Ash, would you like to come in here?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just on that point, well, it's fresh in our mind. Vicky and the team did contact all the landowners where it's relevant that the PSPO is applied, but that may be helpful because we've not been able to establish a point of contact for each area of land. So I will feed that back, Councillor Chapman. The point that I wanted to make was really just to add to the what Claire was saying in terms of here, but also to pick up the point that Councillor Shelley raised. I think there is some learning around the comments that are made from service managers or senior managers in here in making it clear on progress, responsibility and timescales. But just to add to that point, often when we have key projects on here, officers will email members. And I've just done a quick scan through my emails relating it to some of the points that we've made here, and updates have been sent to members via email with a great deal more detail than there is on here. But it might be that in future we reference those emails to help members refer back to them. But I just wanted to be clear that I do think information is provided in most cases. This is a snapshot of the progress, but perhaps we need to clean that out. I say we, I'm looking at Debbie, but make it clearer for members. Thank you, Chair.
I think one addition could be just the contact point for each of the projects or actions. That might be useful because that would enable a reference back. I've got 1 or 2 points. The first is in terms of key performance indicators. And I was thinking of the fly tipping one as an example, where we're reporting a reduction we're reporting a positive impact on fly tipping in terms of the response, but there is something else which might be to reduce the number of fly tipping incidents. So it would be nice to know whether the fly tipping incidents are going up and down, up or down. So it's the what is happening at that level, because we might want to put up effort into reducing the number of fly tipping incidents, and that would then reduce the workload on the council in terms of, on the clean and green team in terms of addressing those. So it might, there's an additional KPI perhaps. And then in terms of projects, I think this has already come up with already been really mentioned, but my example is the traveller site finding project, CPJ 132, which has a rather desultory result. And that may be because the project wasn't defined properly, well enough, or it might be because the consultant ran out of time or budget, or because they weren't directed in the right way, or for a variety of different reasons. But it's not a successful completion to the project. Whereas it might be a completed project, it's not a successfully completed project. And I think we need to be able to, we need to note that more significantly, because we're at a risk of suggesting that we're doing better than we are, and particularly on travellers, because really we haven't made any progress on travellers, whereas we've completed a particular project, which and the issue is we should have some action coming out of that. If we reflect on that, there's something went wrong with that project, and it would be something that we could look at perhaps, or somebody, or it could be looked at as a traveller working group or something. Why didn't that project complete successfully? And there are probably others in the list as well, but that was my concern, that we're reporting, as somebody said, the reporting officers' activity as successful, but was that activity the right activity? And in this case, it clearly wasn't the right activity. So we need to find some other way of doing it. Okay. Any other points? Right. So in that case, we've got 3 recommendations on the front here. The outturn, it's really to note the outturn performance against Q3 Derbyshire Dales plan, the outturn performance against Q3 key performance indicators, and recommend that the report continues to be made to the Scrutiny Committee to highlight progress. So I think if I move those, would anybody like to, noting those recommendations? David, you'll second them. All right, all those in favour? Okay, and that's unanimous. So thank you very much, Claire. It's always a very interesting report, and one it's worth dwelling on because of the issues that you bring up. I think we ought to dwell on those issues, and I hope officers do, and the PA, the leadership group also does. So I hope you get some sort of response from the leadership group. So thank you. Right, now moving on, we've got one more thing. Okay, Dave. Right, well, thank you for coming. And thank you for telling us about glyphosate as well, David. Okay. A report of the Task and Finish Group relationship with East Midlands Combined County Authority. I'm not sure how we do this. Roger, did you want to talk about this?
I was going to say, Chair, that I've written the report.
Oh, you have? Okay.
It's a covering report, and the report of the Task and Finish Group is appended to the report. I don't have a lot to add to my report, really. I've just provided a summary of the activities of the Task and Finish Group, and a summary of what their recommendations are in their report. Basically, the report is brought to this committee for consideration and ultimate approval, and if this committee approves the recommendations in that report, it would then be forwarded on to the decision maker with the recommendations. In this case, I think because of the nature of the subject matter, I think this report would be referred to Community Environment Committee with the recommendations from the Task and Finish Group. But yes, It's whether members of the Task and Finish group and Councillor Shelley is the lead member on that group wish to add anything more to it, or you want to debate any of the issues before approving it as this committee's report. Okay.
Laura.
Thanks. I'd just like to say thank you to the Task and Finish group. I'm not sure who's on it actually, but I thought it was a very interesting report actually, and I know very little about how EMCA works at the moment. And in the light of this, it appears to be as woolly an organisation as the impression I had. So I think this report is probably very timely, and if this can help us to improve our relationship with EMCA and our way of getting into EMCA, then I think it's very much too good. So thank you.
Simon.
Thank you, Chair. I found this really interesting actually, because like Laura, I don't really understand the relationship, and in many ways it was really quite damning, because I mean my headlines were lack of public accountability, lack of clarity around how strategic decisions are made, and the needs of residents in Derbyshire Dales largely being overlooked. And there's some interesting language in here, words like in future we will play an active role, but no real clarity around what does that actually mean and why weren't we playing an active role in the first place. I guess the question is, first of all, what does good look like? For this to be working properly, what does good look like? And second of all, what resources do we need or should we have that you don't have today, whether that's us as councillors doing more or officers or a combination? What do you need to make this work? Because that doesn't come across in the report. Thank you.
Maybe I can answer some of that, being on the Oversight and Scrutiny Committee for EMCA. I think we're trying our hardest to emphasise the issues associated with Derbyshire Dales and the need for district councils to be consulted in actions, because it's not only Derbyshire Dales. The problem is that there are constituent members of the board and then there are non-constituent members, and the constituent members are all county councillors or city councillors, so Derby and Nottingham, and then Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire, and then there are a select number of district councillors. I can't remember how many there are on the, Roger, you may be able to help, on the board, but they have no voting rights. And likewise, I have no voting right in the Oversight and Scrutiny Committee. Now, as Roger points out, the decisions are generally made by consensus, but that hides a multitude of sins. We don't know quite how strong that consensus is, or whether it really was a consensus, or what. But what it does allow is for the non-constituent members to have leverage, some power in those committees and on the board. So I wouldn't want to push back too much on that, because it actually strengthens our position and not weakens it. The main issue is really ensuring that officers and the mayor have a good understanding of what the issues are associated with the district councils, and collectively and individually, and also helping them to formulate suitable actions or investments coming out of that. And we have, I mean, the one I tackled last week was the proposed tourist tax. And how I asked for that to go to the Oversight and Scrutiny Committee, because I said it might discriminate against district council, us in particular, because of the importance of tourism to us, and therefore the proportion of GDP which comes from tourism, which would mean that the tax was levied higher on Derbyshire Dales and High Peak than it might be on one of the more eastern districts in Derbyshire or Nottinghamshire. So, and I met some pushback, but it was accepted that there was an issue that needed to be addressed, and it will be put onto a scrutiny committee agenda in the future. So it is possible to get things addressed. We had other problems associated with. We have a problem associated with our housing targets at the moment, because the MCA is looking at effectively 3 areas for development. One is on the corridor from Nottingham through Derby and going westwards from there, and the other is the M1 and then around Chesterfield. But then the rest of the region is really hasn't really been considered in detail. So, and the reports that have been produced suggest that we are the importance of Derbyshire Dales is in tourism, whereas I think the work that Steve Capes has done demonstrates that it's not only tourism, but we actually have the biggest sector by GDP, or gross value added, is manufacturing, and manufacturing and tourism employ about the same number of people. So there are things that are being ignored by MCA because. Well, I don't know. They're being ignored by MCA, and we have to make our presence known, I think, in that. But we're trying to do that, to some success as well. We're not getting any significant pushback, and the different views are accepted, and we're having a similar other people at district level or borough level are putting forward similar views. So. The Mayor of Mansfield, Mayor Abrams, is also pushing hard in the Oversight and Scrutiny Committee, and being effective in doing so. So there is work being done. Roger.
Yes, thank you. I mean, I have to thank. Particularly 2 councillors in the sense of contributing to this. Yourself, David, and obviously your in-depth knowledge, because you are actually engaged in this process formally, which is great, but you are very much an outlier. And the other person is Councillor O'Brien, and I'm indebted to him particularly because he was the person who effectively brokered an introduction both to Councillor Gilby and to Mayor Clare's Chief of Staff. Without that, this would have very much been an outside looking in report. And as you know, I think from when I raised this last summer, I think this issue is existential, not just to our district council, but to, I'd go as far as saying, to democracy in this area. And it is that I was struck when Councillor Gilby said, and I don't know whether I can't remember if I put this in fact, that effectively life will be so much easier once we have unitary authority status. And then these issues with these petty district councils and borough councils who aren't involved in this at all will all go away, because there'll be so many fewer elected representatives involved. I'm paraphrasing slightly here, but she was looking forward. She says she was looking forward to that happening. And so we do have to take this in the context of local government reorganisation that's happening at the same time. And what it means is that you are going to have a strategic body. These things are going to be called MSAs now. That's another acronym to get your head around. Mayoral Strategic Authority. And you will have unitary authorities. And so you could say that what we're actually looking forward to is the turf war between those 2 elements. And we're on the sidelines at the moment. Now, all of that sounds very negative and very political, but the reason for looking at it at this stage is that on the ground, as a district council, we're still having to deliver, and we're going to continue to have to deliver, I believe, into 2028. So there are real impacts of these. I mean, Simon's right that the lack of understanding. If we as councillors don't understand what's going on, heaven help the people out there who are the service recipients. And so, it is very frustrating and quite depressing. Councillor O'Brien, again, came to the rescue with some suggestions for positive things that we can get out of this, because I was determined at the start that it wasn't just going to be a knocking copy at the expense of Mayor Clare, that there's very little mileage in that. We have to do our level best to try and get what we can out of this situation and to try and improve the workings of this mayoral authority. And so there are some pointers towards practical outcomes there. And I hope that if we don't dwell on them, then if this goes to community environment, then they do dwell on them. And I would like to focus on them, which is this, you'll see there in 2.4, and it's reiterated, I think, on page 64 with the recommendations, that there is this new external strategic relationships and partnerships group. That's Councillor O'Brien's words there, and I would echo that. A lot of it is to do with institutional behaviour, and so there is an onus on us as councillors to be more aware and to ask more searching questions, and also for the officers as well. There's a reference here to officers getting more engaged in some of these discussions and making sure that their voices are heard if they feel that they're not at the moment. So there's an effort element there as well, but there is a process point as well. And so the process points are very much about that external relationships group, the way the leader of the council works through the strategic leadership group, because there are other groups which are already running in parallel. Some of our senior officers have other meetings with senior officers in the county, and those need to be used as a channel to get messages across to MCA. And then there's two specific points there to the Mayor's office, which is for their senior officers to organise a meeting with our senior officers, which I understand hasn't taken place yet, and for the Mayor's office for more structured engagement with our service team leads. So those are points there that I hope somebody follows up, either the leader of the council or the chief executive, because coming back to my earlier point, then yes, you need to have responsibility for delivering things, and at the moment that's not happening. One thing which you might be interested to know, when I spoke to Claire Spencer, the chief of staff, she indicated that we were one of the few councils that showed an interest in what was going on, that we were questioning things. Now, I know there are other members who are, you mentioned Mayor Abrams, who, for example, who are, they're engaged because they're actually appointees. But it doesn't seem to be that level of interest across, I don't know how many districts and boroughs there are across the two counties, but you would have thought that many other councils would also be interested in something which is intrinsic to their fate. I'm not sure that's the case.
I agree with that. Simon, would you like to come in?
Yeah, look, thank you both for that. That's really helpful context. I guess two things. One is it would be interesting, if you haven't already done so, to see the MCA's response to this report. Almost ask them to write back and tell us what they think. And it's interesting, Roger, your point about our interest in MCA and what is going on. I mean, I know Claire Spencer, she's very good. They are a good team. I've engaged them on a couple of topics, not least overnight visitor levy. But that's me going in as a councillor or as a Labour person talking to a Labour person within a Labour mayoralty. It would be much more helpful if I understood that broader range of topics that perhaps the council wanted to go into bat on behalf of residents for, and what are the formal channels we can use, as well as my perhaps maybe informal channels using the
Simon,
the
I think
party
you hit the
structure.
nail on the head there. I mean, when I was going to say that Peter O'Brien was able to make the connection because he went through the Labour Party, not because he went through a formal route. I mean, I'm saying the Labour Party route wasn't formal. It was a political route, and the issue is that there should be a route which isn't the political party. It should be because that effectively is a bit closed off. In terms of they understand, the officers understand the issue in EMCA, and they will respond if asked. So I don't think there's there's no prejudice against district councils or borough councils. It's just that we're not necessarily fully on their radar, and it's important to make sure that we are. I mean, there are two areas. You asked for areas. There are two areas which I've raised. One is brownfield site funding, and the other is housing. And Peter O'Brien and I have met with them on housing, specifically because of the number that we're being asked to build and the need for support really from EMCA in terms of infrastructure associated with that. And also we need to fit into their overall regional strategy, because there's no point in building houses if we don't. So there will be, in terms of the local plan, I've asked for EMCA to be included as an organisation that we need to have some sort of duty to cooperate with, in both directions. So sort of there'd be a memorandum of understanding that we would indicate what we were looking at doing, and EMCA would acknowledge that, and likewise the other way around. So yes, I think it is nice to have the Labour Party route, but we need to have something more formal, and that would be through the sorts of group that Peter O'Brien has suggested, I think. Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point to illustrate not being on the radar. I was horrified when I think it was Mayor Clare's transport plan went to sort of consultation with drop-in sessions. The only one for the whole of Derbyshire Dales was in Ashbourne. Yeah. And they've probably written us off because actually only about 12 people turned up in the entire day, and there was about 4 or 5 of them sitting around. I don't know what the answer was to make us more involved, but just one for the whole of Derbyshire Dales. But there we go. Anyway, I'd like to thank Roger and the idea of looking at this, very timely, and the 6 recommendations on page 65. Wholeheartedly support those, plus the one that, yes, we send this to EMCA as well, so they can see what our concerns are. Just a question. My immediate thought was this would be a GNR matter, but yes. I mean it is C&E. It is C&E, but it sounds like GNR to me.
I thought it was GNR too. Yeah.
But yes, thank you, Roger, for hard work. Having done one of these as well, it is hard work, isn't it? And thank you for putting this together. A timely underlining of what the situation is. And yes, we do need to be able to talk to these people, not least because they hold the purse strings at the moment. Thank you.
Would there be a consensus for sending this to Mayor Clare? And on top of that, would there be would you think that inviting Mayor Clare here to present to Council about EMCA and what it's intending to do, with the possibility of a question and answer session, would that be something that we should do? Simon?
I think absolutely yes, and I can tell you categorically, I get a lot of noise on this topic because already, off the back of LGR, but the East Midlands Mayoral Authority, already people feel, particularly in the rural areas, particularly in the north, which is about as far away from the urban centres as we can get, Derby and Nottingham, they do not feel represented and they don't feel confident. And in fact, the transport survey was a good example. Whilst it is a good initiative and a good survey, and I will champion it again as a Labour Party member, the feeling I got through all the dialogues I had with parish councils was this is an urban-centric consultation, yes, not a rural consultation. So people want to hear that their needs are being heard, and they need to understand what the mechanism is for that. So yes.
Okay. So, Roger.
Thank you. Just as a quick one, I thought it was a terrible survey, if only because it was, I won't rehearse it too much, I mean, it was very glossy, but it was billed as a plan, but it was a motherhood and apple pie plan full of strategic level aspirations rather than a plan about how you would do things. But just putting that to one side, I do wonder whether, because Mayor Clare is obviously a politician, like we all are, in fact, whether we might get more value out of the senior officers rather than Mayor Clare. And that's actually one of the thrusts of the recommendations here. It's simply because I feel they will probably have their teeth into the issues that we're most closely interested in. I mean, you'll note, looking at this, that the area that receives most attention, I think, from memory, is the bit about economic development. Yes. The ones that really worry me in terms of the responsibilities of EMCA are climate change and housing, and partly for the housing reason that you mentioned, the brownfield, there's this fixation on the brownfield sites, and yet it looks like EMCA is about to become the route to unlocking money from Homes England rather than ourselves. So this has a real impact on us. And as for the climate change one, I couldn't find really any evidence of progress on climate change or interest at all. And so I think we do need the senior officer who is responsible for that area to be here to answer our questions.
There are a number of interventions in terms of funding. Homes England is one of them. UK SPF funding is another, where it'll be UK SPF funding is being top sliced for regional initiatives, and then so what we would get would be a reduced amount in comparison with what we might get out of MHCLG. So there is a change, and I think we need to be very aware of that. And also, I mean, we don't have the same problems that some other areas of the East Midlands have, and in some respects it's right that the mayor should, or the authority should, focus on those areas with the biggest problems, and I'm not sure how that factors into supporting us in comparison with those areas. Nevertheless, can we therefore vote on noting these recommendations? Simon, yeah? And also sending this report perhaps to the chief executives and senior officers as well, and Mayor Clare, and asking Mayor Clare or inviting Mayor Clare for a meeting of the council here. So.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to say, Chair, was that because this report is very much in draft format, because it's from the Task and Finish group to the committee, we've held off from sending it to EMCA at this stage because it was still very much draft. I think once this committee has approved it as its report, I think it is then legitimate that we can circulate it wider. I think it could also be legitimate for us to say that we could invite their representations as part of the process of it going forward to the formal decision-making committee as well. And then just to pick up on the point about why community and environment, I think that was based upon the key issues that were identified fairly early in the report were about business economic growth, climate change, housing regeneration. Those are all matters that fall within the remit of the Community and Environment Committee rather than GNR, and that's the reason that the recommendation is going there.
Right. Okay, so what does that mean for the recommendation? So we wait, do we have to bring,
No,
circulate this as a draft report?
I think there is nothing now. If you approve the recommendations to approve this as this committee's report, there is no harm in us going out there into the wider world with this report now, inviting comments, and then when the decision-making body is making a decision on your recommendations, they can possibly make a more informed decision because we've received representations from EMCA officers and possibly the mayor before they make those decisions.
That sounds good. Any other comments? Laura?
Should C&E really make the decision as to whether we invite Mayor Clare or anybody else to speak?
Yes.
And to whom they would be speaking?
Yeah. I still maintain it's legitimate that we can circulate the report at the Scrutiny Committee because it is your report and it's ultimately up to the executive, the decision-making body about whether they accept your recommendations or not. But at least by circulating it more widely before it goes there, we can make the decision-making body can make a more informed decision.
So the motion would be to circulate this report more widely for and including MCA in order to elicit comments that can then be used to refine the report for presentation to the C&E, and also recommend to C&E that they invite Mayor Clare for a presentation on MCA and its relationship with district councils, and with the intention of having a question and answering session afterwards. Okay. Peter?
Just timescale, this would be March, C&E?
The timescale might be a bit tight if we're expecting feedback. Bear in mind the agenda for March C&E will be going out fairly imminently. We're not far off March now, are we?
No,
so.
but there is a window, and I think if we let it drift, then we're another 2 months down the road, aren't we?
Yeah.
So if that's possible,
I think I did propose in the report that we tried to get it to March, but
if we go out, we wouldn't get the responses back from MCA.
No.
Roger.
I would advocate moving at pace on this. Every month that goes by, this organisation is doing things, being kind to it, and we're not quite sure what it's doing, but it has been in place now for the best part of 2 years, and it is almost by stealth accruing power and responsibility. If we leave it much longer, our ability to influence it will have diminished even further.
We put this out to C&E and we also circulate it to MCA at the same time, and then they can make whatever comments they want. Right.
I did put in the report 17th of March, so that's the next C&E.
Okay. All right. So that would be what we'd be recommending to. Well, that's the outcome of this report then. So we'll have to have some sort of motion here, don't we? So.
Well, I think it is the recommendation in my covering report really, which is to note the findings of the Task and Finish group and approve the recommendations of their report and the recommendations, and then refer it on to Community and Environment Committee, and we can just add something there that that approved report be forwarded to officers at MCA so that they can have an opportunity to comment on it.
Right, okay. So, would anybody like to move that? Simon, seconded? Peter? Okay, all those in favour? Brilliant. All that's unanimous again. Thank you very much. Right. Well, thank you very much all for attending. I think this is a useful meeting actually. The MCA report I think was valuable, and also Claire's report, and the presentation on glyphosate has informed us, I think, so very useful set of papers.